Well, I went to Horror Nights, and I gotta say, I had an absolute blast. The mazes were fun, and the way the park was decorated really gave it that perfect Halloween vibe. I had a great time, but wow, do I hate to admit that a lot of it is because I gave up a huge chunk of my paycheck for the Fast Pass. The mazes are always the main attraction whenever Horror Nights opens up, but there is no way you can go to every single maze in one night without paying extra. But to be honest, some of them aren't even worth paying all that extra money for. The mazes are fun, you guys, but some are way more fun than others, and I really don't want people out here thinking that they have to choose between paying rent or having a good time at Horror Nights. So, just because I can, I'm going to give a brief rundown of all the mazes at Universal. Please note, I tried really hard not to be that guy that holds up the line just because he wanted a cool video of what's going on, so the footage at times may be unclear and or a bit off, but know that you have the Oscar guarantee that nobody was inconvenienced and all the footage you are about to see was recorded as politely as possible. But with that out of the way, let's take a look at what Horror Nights has to offer in 2023. Stranger Things 4. I think this maze has the highest production value. It takes up basically an entire studio area. Even just getting past a certain point in the line has you in a cold area with the Stranger Things theme playing along with some classic audio lines.
You hear me? Chrissy, wake up!
Wow, this would be a lot scarier if I didn't have the Schmoyoho remix downloaded.
Time to wake up, can you hear me? Wake up, Chrissy! I don't like this, Chrissy, wake up!
Didn't mean to scare you.
But once you go inside, you do get to experience the entire Stranger Things 4 story. All the major events are covered, and they even include cute little transition rooms to give the illusion that you're actually moving along with the story. Right after the Chrissy room, there's an empty desert room to reference the drive to the secret base, and the door to the next room even has a little keypad. This maze did help me remember all the cool Stranger Things moments that happened in the show, and it's really cool how some of these doors had tendril-like parts to make it feel like we were crawling through parts of Vecna to get to the end. The attention to detail is really there, but personally, I don't think Vecna is that scary of a monster, and I'm honestly not that big of a Stranger Things fan. If you're like me, you thought season 1 was great, but most of the stuff afterwards just couldn't live up to it. And if you do feel that way, this maze isn't going to convince you otherwise. As cool as it is, it's basically nothing but member berries. So if you've seen the show, you already know where it's going and will probably get bored because you can predict everything. Or you haven't seen the show, in which case you are completely lost, have no clue what's going on, and you'll probably be bored. Overall, 6 out of 10 maze. Good fun if you're a diehard Stranger Things fan, but I wouldn't recommend it if you're not scared of Mr. Burns over here.
What a delightful waste of time.
Exorcist Believer. I'm going to be straight up and say that I haven't seen any of the Exorcist films, so I'm definitely not the best person to talk about this maze, but I'll give it my best shot. The design for this one is also very well done, and it uses a lot of everyday scenes as a backdrop for most of their scares. You start off in a room that looks like a store after closing, but it's being haunted by little Rosemary's baby over here. Damn it, Rose, I told you to roll the windows down before leaving her in the car! Again, I haven't seen the movies, but I have seen the trailer, and it does incorporate parts of the movie into the maze. You get to hear the girls screaming, and the cast here looks exactly like the girls do in the movies. But that aside, one of the best parts in the maze involved a cool trick where the walls disappear, and you get to see the possessed girls trying to escape the mental ward. Now you might be thinking, Oscar, if you think that's the coolest part of the maze, why did you spoil it for the rest of us? And while that may have technically been a spoiler, aside from that one scare, this maze is honestly meh. I'm sure there's 1 or 2 people that bought a Horror Nights ticket just for the Exorcist maze, but my dudes, the movie is already out and it is getting nothing but bad reviews. It's safe to say that the people who would have enjoyed this maze are not clicking on this video. They probably couldn't even read the title and thought it was just some kid's cartoon and not a Horror Nights review. If Exorcist fans could read, I'm sure they'd be really upset with me right now. Because Exorcist Believer relies too much on an everyday setting, there's not too much to make it unique, so it feels like a generic haunted house. If anything, it's a little worse than a generic haunted house, because there's a certain smell that follows you throughout the whole maze. It could be because one of the rooms takes place on a farm and the smell just leaks everywhere, Or maybe the smell is a reference to how the girls smell after being possessed by demons. I don't know, but definitely the scariest thing in this maze is that it smells like a Smash Brothers tournament. 5 out of 10. Feel free to skip this one. Holidayz In Hell. I didn't have high expectations for this one, as something about the Z just made me think it was going to be some generic kiddie horror. But no, this maze is probably one of the best ones here at Horror Nights. Even as you get ready to enter, there's dressed up actors outside and they really help set up the atmosphere. The theme is, naturally, putting scary twists to normally very happy celebrations. And every time you're about to enter a new theme, the transition corridor has a poster hinting at some of the scares to come. I personally really like these posters and found myself really taking the time to admire them. And the actual rooms were just as interesting. The first room revolves around the New Year's baby, and there's a lot of infirmary imagery here. The Easter room and the Thanksgiving room had a lot of detail, and I really wish I could have slowed down to admire it more. I feel like because these rooms aren't tied down by a license, it really lets the creators design their own twisted horrors from top to bottom. Each section even had its own scent, ranging from sweet in the Easter Bunny room to earthy and strong in the Leprechaun cabin. This maze did have a lot of fun jump scare horror, but there's a lot of scares to be had in just seeing bloody and gory versions of usually family-friendly events. 9 out of 10. The only thing wrong with it is that some of the holidays are noticeably less scary than others, but this definitely had some of the best scares and one of the shortest lines at Universal. Please don't leave Horror Nights without giving this maze a try. I promise you it's worth going to. The Stellar Bar. After going through these 3 mazes, you may be feeling snackish and may want to grab something to eat or drink. Right upstairs in the area is an 80s themed bar to go with the Stranger Things vibes. We ordered a Surfer Boy and an Upside Down. The drinks were definitely delicious, but we also started to feel hungry, so we ordered the Demogorgon Pizza. The Demogorgon Pizza was absolutely disappointing and not at all worth the price. The plate was small and the food was even smaller. The moment the server came out with this, I knew we essentially threw away $12. Please don't waste your money on this. It tastes okay, but it is definitely the least filling option we could have picked. 8 out of 10 for drinks, 3 out of 10 for the Demogorgon Pizza. The Last of Us. After being extremely disappointed by paying $12 for a small croissant with sauce on top, we made our way to The Last of Us in the hopes that the creepy maze would get us back in the fun Halloween spirit. I feel like this one had the most actors out of all the mazes. There always seemed to be a Joel and Ellie talking somewhere, and they all did a great job of looking and acting the part. There's a lot of the rooms that are just abandoned warehouses or lonely wilderness, and a lot of the scares were rooted in the feeling of being alone and facing overwhelming odds. But homie, I was a first-generation Latino student at a university. Lonely and overwhelming odds was a standard Tuesday for me. This maze bored me. I've played both the games and I have seen some of the HBO series, and I did enjoy them, but those shows were not meant to be this scary. And you can tell the designers struggled a bit with incorporating the license into a scary maze. And the maze just felt like it dragged on at times. It honestly would make a better ride than it would a maze. It was nice to see what Infected would look like in person, but a dark scary room with gunshots didn't scare me, and if anything, just made me a little homesick. 4 out of 10. It was fun to see the license in person, but there's a reason this series is more of a thriller drama than a horror. Blumhouse, Behind the Screams. Sadly, we were not able to make it to the Purge performance, so I can't give that an honest rating, but we were able to catch the Blumhouse presentation. It was cool seeing all these items from famous movies, and naturally, seeing the Five Nights at Freddy's animatronics was really cool, especially because we had literally just seen the movie beforehand. I think this event is definitely worth going to if the line is under 30 minutes. Blumhouse was fun, educational, and had a lot of great photo opportunities. Low on the scares, but amazing for cinema lovers. 8 out of 10, and a definite must if the line is short. Evil Dead Rise. After Blumhouse, we went to check out some more of the actual mazes, and as some of y'all may know, I am a huge Evil Dead fan. I wish that the maze was based off Ash Williams' Evil Dead, but I'll take anything that has my favorite little Necronomicon. Right outside the maze is the famous elevator scene, and I love how they decorated it. It has a very nice loop to it, so you have something fun to admire as you wait to go inside. Once you're in, you get walked through the events of the story, and since the movie was actually good, the maze actually has a nice flow to it. You see a small tiny room with what I'm pretty sure is the Necronomicon, and slowly the possessed demons turn a normalish apartment and morph it into a house of terrors. Gotta give the maze props, it does a great job of setting the atmosphere before throwing in the jump scares. Sometimes the characters will be the first things you see when you enter the room, and they'll just stand there reenacting a scene from a movie. But don't worry, they make sure to include the iconic end monster, and it's every bit as cool as you're hoping it would be. 8 out of 10. A great maze based on a great movie. Its biggest downfall is its popularity. Because it's a good licensed maze, expect crazy long wait times, but I strongly recommend you give it a try before leaving Horror Nights. Monsters of Latin America. Right outside the maze, they have La Muerte, Death, digging graves and singing haunting nursery rhymes to himself. He'll also occasionally describe the scares that await inside. If you're a Spanish speaker, you'll definitely enjoy this part of the maze. The first room is dedicated to Tlahuelpuchi, a shape-shifting devil that feeds off the blood of infants. The room is rooted in atmosphere and has a lot of skeletons littered about. Clearly, she likes to snack, and she does it often. I don't blame her. This bag of Ruffles was full when I started recording this video. I'm sure the people at Costco think I'm a monster too. The next room I think is the creepiest. These rooms are themed after La Lechuza. She feels more or less the same as the last monster, except she eats people indiscriminately. You can even catch her eyeing you up if you look in the right spot. Eventually, she will jump out and try to eat you. It didn't happen to me, but it did happen to my girlfriend. SMH. Homegirl will willingly pay hundreds of dollars to have some uggo in a costume try to eat her, but when I offer to do it at home for free, suddenly she has a headache and isn't in the mood. Women. The last room in here is themed after El Silbón, and he's really well done and tells the best story, but you have to know a lot of his lore to truly appreciate the details. Essentially, El Silbón was a spoiled brat who loved deer meat. One day he asks his dad to go hunting for deer, but the dad has no luck catching anything and comes back empty-handed. So, Mr. Spoiled Brat over here stabs his dad, cuts out his dad's heart and liver, and then gives them to his mom to cook. Mom starts preparing the meat, but notices something is off. Eventually, she realizes that this is her husband's organs, and she curses her son for all eternity and calls Grandpa over to help deal out a punishment. Grandpa comes over, ties the now literal bastard to a pole, and whips him over and over so hard that his back is essentially destroyed. Grandpa then places ointment on El Silbón's back, an ointment made out of alcohol, chili peppers, and lemon juice. Grandpa then, that's right, we're still going, gets the dad's remains, places them in a large sack, then forces the kid to carry them on his back for all eternity, and then kicks him out of the house. And then he sends the dogs out to chase and maul El Silbón for good measure. Don't you just love lore? With all this in mind, his rooms feel like a twisted butcher shop, which I think is really fitting. The bodies look like they were mangled by large dogs, and he has a lot of organs lying around as if we walked in on him preparing a meal. And further in, the door to one of the last rooms has us walking into what looks like the opening of a sack, as Muerte tells us that we are now marked for death.
Those who listen are marked for death.
As you explore the inside of the bag, you see the skeletons of other people that were marked for death. And right before you exit the maze, death waits for you, pointing to a very special custom-made gravestone.
His grave is for you.
I know I essentially spoiled the whole maze, but I think that without explaining the lore and the meaning behind the monsters, this maze would end up feeling like a generic foreign language haunted house. And I really want to do my best to fight the stereotype that Latinos are just a bunch of religious people scared of spooky urban legends. Because in my defense, some of y'all grew up unafraid of El Cucuy, and it really shows.
Duérmete, niña, duérmete ya, que viene el coco y te comerá.
9 out of 10 maze. The only thing holding it back is that there's just not enough time to explain the fascinating lore behind the monsters, which is honestly not even the maze's fault. Please do a quick Google search on the monsters to truly get the most out of this experience. Latin America, general area. One thing I do want to praise Universal for real quick is how amazing this area is decorated. The Esqueleto is a very important part of Spanish urban legends, and they did a great job of decorating the park with them. There's even fun little areas with papel picado with fun Spanish themed foods. Such a shame I was too scarred from the Demogorgon pizza to risk spending more money on food, but the food looked nice and the drinks looked like they'd be a lot of fun. It's a well decorated area and is definitely the area you should relax in. If you can confidently order food in Spanish, I think this area is definitely worth spending time in. Hola señor, ¿qué te puedo ofrecer? La biblioteca está allá. Terror Tram, the Exterminatorz. On your way to the last couple mazes, I recommend you take this time to check out the Terror Tram. The theme this year is Exterminatorz, a fun little role reversal where the bugs have decided that humans are the true pests of Earth and have joined forces to exterminate them. As always, they take famous areas like the Bates Motel and the Jupiter's Claim and add fun new decorations to it. There's not too much story or suspense to this one, but it is bright, colorful, and fun. It's cool to see how famous cinema icons are decorated to match the new theme they go with every year. Plus, since you're out in a big area, you can exaggerate and scream as loud as you want. Every time I go, I try to scream so loud that I also end up scaring the people in front of me. Gotta try to hype up the employees and make sure that they have fun at their job too, you know? Overall, a fun 7 out of 10 ride. Nothing scary, but it is nicely decorated and a good time if you want to stretch your legs and also see a lot of fun cinema props up close.
That's the mystery machine!
Check it out if you're interested, but don't feel like you have to go. And now really quick, a word of warning. Okay, time for the last 2 mazes, and just so you know, these are the ones that you have to walk the furthest for. You have to walk way past the Hogwarts area, and the lines for these were the longest. It got to the point where we couldn't tell the general attendee line from the express line. So make sure that you got some snacks and water because you may be here a while. Universal Monsters, Unmasked. The Universal Horrors Unmasked is... I don't even know what to say. Usually I try to start with something positive about the mazes before getting all critical about them, but I really didn't like this maze. I honestly had to go through my footage over and over because I just couldn't remember much about it. This one felt like Universal wanted to use its famous licensed monsters, realized it didn't have that many, and then just threw them all in violent, spooky scenarios just to try to get their brand out there. The atmosphere in here was nice, but it felt like the textbook definition of generic haunted house maze. Essentially, you're in the Paris catacombs, where they keep all the dead people, and it just so happens to be the lair of a zombified Phantom of the Opera. Knockoff Quasimodo is here too, and Dr. Jekyll is off to the side doing his totally not peer-reviewed experiments. Towards the end, they do have a cool cabaret of death with some nice effects, but there's nothing that I feel you wouldn't be okay with missing out on. It really is just your standard horror maze, just with a Universal budget. Personally, my favorite part of the maze was just playing Pokemon Go in the line. Plus, the Jack and Sally couple in front of us were really cool. If I had any amount of self-confidence, I probably would have talked to them. But, like a good millennial, I'll just give them a random shout out on social media that they'll probably never see. Because even at horror nights, nothing is scarier than trying to start conversations. To the Jack and Sally couple, hope you had a good time at horror nights. Sorry that I took out that gym while you weren't looking. 4 out of 10 maze. You probably won't remember anything from my review besides the Pokemon Go couple either, and that's okay. Chucky's Horror Kill Count. Right across from the Universal maze is Chucky's Horror Kill Count, and let me say that I think this is objectively the best maze at Horror Nights. Chucky is iconic because he's the only popular horror character that can juggle horror and comedy really well. So instead of the generic dark and gory corridors, we have some fun unique scenarios with actual decent lighting. Each set of rooms is modeled after certain parts in the Chucky TV series, and it's a lot of fun to see them recreate certain scenes straight out of the show. The bathroom scene I thought was particularly fun, as the Chucky would squirt water out of its mouth and cause the whole room to smell like a scented bath. Plus, if you know the Chucky lore, You know, he ended up cloning himself, so seeing all these different Chuckies running around didn't break any immersion because this is basically what happens in the show. But even if you don't know anything about the show, this maze is a well-lit experience with enough scares to make you feel like you're getting the most out of your Universal trip. But if you thought you were getting into Chucky with under an hour wait,
You suckers.
Chucky always had the longest wait time from the moment the park opened, and we could not tell the express and the general line apart because they were both filled with so many people. But Chucky is a 9 out of 10 and is objectively the best maze at Universal. I doubt anyone would fight me on this. Chucky's Killer Barbecue. After going through all the mazes and getting ready to head home, I decided to give Chucky's Killer Barbecue a try. I am a really huge fan of the Child's Play series, and the names of these foods were so fun and in theme that I just had to buy something. Friends till the burnt ends, Always Come Back Corn Dog, Like to Be Hugged Salad, Chucky's Macassacre and Cheese, Chucky's A Clucking Nightmare, a reference to one of the best one-liners in movie history, plus the bun also has the iconic Chucky stitches burnt into it. How can I say no? The park was about to close, so naturally the food was cold, bland, but at least it did a good job of showing off the license and actually felt like I ate afterwards. 5 out of 10, but I'm sure if I didn't wait until the park was closing to eat, the meal would have been much better. In conclusion, overall, Horror Nights was a fun experience and I'm really glad we went this year. The licensed mazes were better than usual, and the way each area was decorated this year really made them feel unique from one another. The only thing bringing down the experience is that even the express lines are starting to get a little long now, and I can only imagine this problem getting worse in the future. But Horror Nights 2023 was still a solid 8 out of 10 experience. Everyone, thank you so much for watching me talk about my experience at Horror Nights. Please let me know if you went and what your favorite experiences were. It's totally fine if you disagree with me, I still would like to hear what you thought was fun. I would also like to know if you had any nightmares when you went to sleep that night. Me personally, I think I had the worst nightmare I've ever had. I had a dream where I died and went straight to hell, and all they were serving were Demogorgon pizzas. Yes, I'm ending this video on a joke about how much I hate the Demogorgon pizza. I don't care that my girlfriend bumped into Jaden Smith while she was waiting for me. If he was hungry and got a tiny piece of bread with marinara on top, I'm sure he would have been pissed too.